Chapter 188 of One Punch Man is here, and with it comes one of the most anticipated interactions in all of One Punch Man, involving none other than the strongest man alive, King, and Atomic Samurai. For those of you that have read the webcomic, you know exactly what interaction I'm talking about here, and you're probably just as excited as I am. And for you manga onlys, let me just tell you that you're in for a real treat. But along with that, in this chapter, we get some new characters introduced, and some mystery surrounding Amai Mask. And that's actually how this chapter kicks off. But just before I get started, if you guys enjoy One Punch Man content like this, then do me a favor and subscribe and hit those notifications, because I probably do One Punch Man chapter reviews before anybody else. So if you want to be the first person to know as soon as a chapter drops, hit the bell. But alright, let's get started. So the chapter starts out deep in the mountains of G City, and we open up with this conversation between E-Iron, Okami Itachi, and Bushi Drill, where they've apparently been investigating Amai Mask. It seems like they've been getting very suspicious of him after experiencing how feral he gets in real life when it comes to monsters. In particular, they start talking about that moment when Super S possessed that private military group, and in the original version of the manga, he straight up takes them out with no hesitation. But in the Redcon version, he just knocks them out, so it makes Amai Mask seem like less of a bad guy. Regardless, though, they still sensed his bloodlust, and also noticed that his face transforms from time to time, and originally they tried explaining it away with plastic surgery, which would make sense with a guy that's obsessed with his appearance like Amai Mask is, but then they realized that there's no record of Amai Mask ever seeing any type of doctor for any type of procedures, and there's really nothing known about him at all since he became a hero. And it's pretty interesting that all this stuff is coming up now, because Amai Mask actually plays a major role in the manga, probably within the next like 10 chapters or so. So this is kind of new manga content here, where the disciples of Atomic Samurai are actually getting involved in the investigation of Amai Mask. It's pretty interesting that in this manga continuity, Amai Mask and the disciples have had this like kind of close-knit dynamic that really wasn't present at all in the webcomic, and it's really starting to make me wonder how this is going to change events that are coming later in the manga that have some heavy implications for Amai Mask. I, for one, really haven't been too interested in the whole disciple storyline, because they just don't seem like that much of interesting characters to me, but this development makes their dynamic in the story seem a lot more interesting to me, and I think this is why Murata and One decided to do it, just to kind of give them a bigger importance. They have their doubts though, because E-Iron kind of vouches for Amai Mask, thinking that he's actually a good guy, and he felt like he has good intentions, but they just aren't sure yet, so they're going to kind of table that for now and continue to investigate him before they bring it up to Atomic Samurai. So this is when we probably get one of the big surprises of the chapter, because the disciples go to meet Atomic Samurai at this monument for the Council of Swordsmen, specifically the ones that were taken out during the Monster Association fight. And originally I thought one of those swordsmen was Nichiren, the guy that gave Atomic Samurai the Sunblade, because, you know, he straight up had his entire body melted from like the chest down by one of Vomit If You're Ugly's punches. But no, it turns out that he actually got some bionic legs, and he's doing just fine. On top of that, we meet two new swordsmen that are actually children of the deceased swordsman that we saw in the Monster Association arc. The first one is named Yuta, who was Amahare's daughter. I forgot exactly who's who amongst the ones that actually, you know, passed away or whatever. And of course, Murata gives us yet another waifu in the One Punch Man community for people to like endlessly do colorings and fan art of. And the other is this nerdy looking swordsman that's named Shido, who is the son of Zambai. I actually think this guy's design's pretty cool. I've always really liked like the nerdy swordsman in like a lot of manga or anime, so I'm pretty excited to see what this guy can do in the future. Well, getting back to Nichiren, he's apparently doing completely fine after getting these bionic parts, and he hasn't skipped a beat with his swordsmanship. And he starts to explain how he's acclimated to his bionic parts so quickly, because he explains that if you circulate your ki into your weapon, it will become a perfect part of your body. It's the same for a blade or an artificial body. And immediately after this, he throws an apple up in the air and seems to slice it a couple times. But surprisingly, as he sheathes his sword, an entire mountain behind the apple gets completely shredded, but the apple stays intact. You'd assume that he just cut behind the apple, but it's actually something a lot more incredible, and something that should definitely be getting you webcomic readers excited, because this apple is actually very important in the events that's to come in the next chapter or two. Well, the newly introduced swordsmen wonder exactly what the hell happened here, how the apple managed to not get cut at all, but Atomic Samurai corrects them when he says Nichiren's exquisite skill is such that his sword is so fast it doesn't even open up a cut. This hasn't even noticed that it's been cut, referring to the apple. And just that line alone, again, should get you guys excited. But apparently the epitome of swordsmanship is being able to do something like this. Cut an apple so perfectly and so swiftly that it straight up doesn't even realize that it was cut. It's like you pass right through it. So then Nichiren and Atomic start having this interesting conversation where Nichiren says, I heard Bang retired as a hero. What will you do now, Kamikaze? You knocked on the hero door because you wanted to compete with Bang the Master, right? And this is something that I tend to forget, because he really is kind of only in the heroes because he acknowledges Bang as very strong and he wants to challenge him. He was like his one true rival in a sense, but all the experiences that Atomix had as a hero, especially during the Monster Association arc, he realizes that being around all these strong S-class heroes allows him to learn and grow with them. And in particular, he says, not to mention, amongst the top heroes, there's still a man whose true power is unfathomable to me. And it shows King in the background. Put a pin in that because that's going to come up later. Well, we cut away from Atomic Samurai for a bit, and we get back to Saitama and Genos, who make it back to Saitama's apartment. There we see that Forte's building the doghouse that he promised he would build for Saitama, which of course is going to house Overgrown Rover and Black S. Black S isn't too happy that he has to live in a doghouse, but he really has no other choice. And he reminds the readers that right now his main goal is to keep eating dog food and replenish his cell count. I don't know, I know Black S is evil, but seeing him eat dog food with Rover here is pretty adorable. I don't know, I enjoyed it, but whatever. As soon as Genos and Saitama pull up, Black S realizes that Genos is 100% going to recognize him if he sees him, because he straight up like tore his body to shreds during the Monster Association arc, so he just like slides behind the doghouse and hides. And Genos never met Rover, so apparently he doesn't recognize him as a monster or something, because he just doesn't pay him any mind. Well, Forte introduces himself, and Saitama points out that he's his neighbor, and Genos just goes, "Your neighbor, huh? Sorry to rush you, but I'm going to have to ask you to hand over your room. I'm gonna bring my luggage in later today, thank you." Like straight up just kicking this dude out of his room just to live next to Saitama. Like what can you do if you're Forte? You really can't do anything, he just has to hand it over, right? So that sucks for him, but we then move away again from Saitama and Genos, back to Atomic Samurai and the Disciples, and they've apparently been looking for somebody because they rang the intercom to their room and they weren't home. So they're like, screw it, let's go eat some sushi. And just a little nugget here, just seeing the mouse sushi sign. This is actually one of Saitama's favorite restaurants, probably because they have cheap sushi. Well, I've never been to Japan, so I don't know how this stuff kind of works, but apparently there's this conveyor belt of sushi just kind of moving past all the tables. And you can just kind of grab what looks appealing to you off the conveyor belt apparently. But regardless, E-Iron sees some salmon that he wants, but it gets taken by the table behind them. Well, after that, Okama Itachi sees some corn with mayo, I guess, that they really want to eat, so they get excited about that. But again, the table behind them takes it before they can. Well, on the third attempt, E-Iron points out that the next plate coming up is a big fatty tuna, and Atomic Samurai really wants it, so he's like, secure that fatty tuna for me. And for the third time, the person behind them ends up taking it. So this really pisses Atomic off, and he's about to get up to go confront this person, like, what the hell, why are you taking all this food? Well, it turns out that the table behind them ends up being none other than King, hanging out and eating sushi by himself. So then Atomic walks to the table and says, "I never expected to see you here, Mr. Strongest Man on Earth. I came here today to meet you. I want to talk to you for a minute." And just like that, the King engine starts roaring and we get a death stare from the man himself, ready to come face to face with Atomic. Now for the manga only people, I don't want to spoil too much here, but the sequence that we're going to be getting after this is probably one of the funnest and most entertaining sequences in all of One Punch Man, like period. Something that the fan base has been waiting to come to the manga for so long now. But all in all, I really enjoyed this chapter. It introduced some new characters, planted some seeds for some new storylines with the Disciples and a My Mask, and of course introduced one of the greatest fights that we're going to be getting in all of One Punch Man, Atomic Samurai versus King. I don't know, I don't want to hype it up too much because I've been hyping it up for sure this whole entire video, but I am so looking forward to next chapter. But let me know what you thought about this one in the comments below. And again, if you enjoy One Punch Man content, then make sure to subscribe. That's it for this one though. Have an absolutely wonderful night, and I'll see you guys in the next one.